Today, we're bringing you a story that embodies resilience and unwavering love. Our guest, Camy Early, wears many hats: a devoted wife, a full time nurse, a mother to two incredible children, and an advocate like no other. Camy shares with us her deeply personal journey with her son, Logan, who was faced with a complex set of challenges. Diagnosed with ADHD and other unspecified neurodevelopmental disorders, along with subclinical features of ASD, Logan's story is a testament to the strength that lies within the human spirit. Camy's own words, he's too functioning to be autistic and too autistic to be functioning, encapsulate the unique struggle that she and Logan face daily. It's a story of determination, love, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. Stay tuned as we delve into this heartwarming narrative, gaining insights from Camy's experiences and learning what it means to breathe moment to moment in the face of adversity.
I have someone special with me today that I want you to meet. I first met Camy through her father, who is a local pastor in our area of Northeast Alabama. Camy is a registered nurse, so she will be able to share her story through a little bit of a different lens than many of our guests. Today's guest is Camy Early. She and her husband, Cody, are the parents to two children, one of them being a handsome young man named Logan, who we're going to be spending the evening talking about. I know you're going to be encouraged and blessed by hearing this story. Camy, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. Good to see you. Thank you so much.
Oh, good to be seen.
Isn't it though? Isn't it though? When I reached out to you to do this, you were a little hesitant, and you were afraid you would stammer and stumble and stuff like that. And I just had to get real with you. I had to tell you, girl, it is your story. Nobody can tell your story like you. So you just put those earbuds in and tell your story. And I think you're going to do well. I think it's going to go very well. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm looking forward to, I know a little bit of your story, but honestly, I don't know a lot of your story. So I'm looking forward to learning about it with the folks that are listening as well. So briefly, if you can, just kind of a nutshell, tell us about Logan and what's going on with him and some things that are happening along the way.
I got you. So, yeah, I was very hesitant because I am not a public speaker by any means. I am good with people, but I am good with face-to-face people. So this is a little bit of a new world for me, but we're going to make it work.
It's just me and you. Nobody else is listening. It's just me and you.
So Logan was born in 2016, and my pregnancy was normal, although we did have several miscarriages beforehand. So I was a nervous Nancy the whole time I was pregnant. Even though it was a beautiful pregnancy for everybody else, I hated it. I still don't like pregnancy. Didn't like it the second time either. It was a completely normal delivery. Everything went as smashingly perfect as you could have hoped for. And we brought home a beautiful, beautiful baby boy that we could not have prayed and asked God for in any more of a perfect situation than what we got. We just didn't know what all we were getting in that bundle. Right. We actually still lived with mom and dad at the time. Okay. So we were still adding on to our house. We had moved into my great-grandparents' house. And so we had moved in with mom and dad. So we brought Logan home to Mimi and Paul's house. So that adds a whole new layer of new parents, new grandparents, and oh yeah, we all live together. And so
that house got real small, didn't it?
It got real small real quick, and we got a real spoiled little baby because his little butt never touched the ground.
Oh my goodness.
Because he was loved from all aspects. But you know, for the first month, 2 months, 6 months, year, we were hitting those milestones. Everything was rocking along. And then we put him in daycare, which was with our Sand Mountain Baptist Association pastor's daughter. Okay. Sarah Gwynn actually kept Logan. She kept both our kids. She was fantastic. And along Logan's story, you may hear me refer to Say, but that's what she is known to as my family because they think she is part of the family. All right. But she kept Logan as well as a couple other boys at the house. And so about 1.5 years, 2 years, we noticed that Logan wasn't acting right. And I was like, Sarah, I think he has autism. And she's like, I don't know. I said, no, something's off. So we went to our 2-year checkup with our pediatrician, and we love Dr. Cochran at Huntsville Pediatrics. She is phenomenal. I cannot say enough wonderful things about her. Even when she told me I was crazy and he was all boy and we were doing this for nothing, she never once made me feel crazy. And she was like, if you feel like we need it, we'll do it. So at his 2-year appointment, I'd asked for a speech eval. He wasn't quite talking as well as we thought he should have. At 2, he had maybe 40 words, and probably 20 of those only me and Dad could understand. And even Cody and Mom had a hard time understanding, but me and Dad were around him more than the others were. Okay. So we could pick up on his gestures. And so we were like, he talks. I don't know what y'all are talking about. And then the more we were step back and look at it, we were like, oh, does he actually talk? Or are we just reading it?
He's communicating, but he's not using all the words to do that.
Yes. So I realized that I was picking up on a whole lot of gestures, and I had a whole lot of mama intuition of what he was wanting.
Right.
So Dr. Cochran allowed us to get a speech eval. But she was like, Camy, I think he just has severe ADHD. I think his ADHD is just so bad that he just can't calm down and talk. And I'm like, okay, well, I can kind of get on board with that because he's rowdy. He loved rough play. He wanted to climb. He wanted to spin. The harder you would fight with him, the better he would be. He was the typical all boy that everybody said, oh, it's just all boy syndrome.
He'll grow out of it. He'll work it out.
Yep, every time. And, my mama's heart was like, please stop telling me that, because I don't think this is something we're going to grow out of. Which, kind of hits an anger nerve. And me and God had a whole lot of talks like, why us, why me? But I'll get into that a little bit later. But Cochran's like, I can't give him any ADHD medicine until we have an official ADHD diagnosis, because he's only 2. And I talked with her and I'm like, I'm scared of medicine. What if I take Logan out of Logan? I don't want him to walk around like a zombie.
Yeah.
But I want him to talk. She's like, I think it'll help. Let's go through the testing. I'm like, okay. In the meantime, it's a 6 to 9 month wait for autism ADHD testing.
Wow.
So this is in September, and we are not supposed to have testing until January. And we are in constant prayer that somebody's going to cancel and they're going to call us and we can get it moved up and get the ball rolling. Right. And they do. And luckily we get to go into whole big December instead of January.
Okay.
But then you wait another month for results. So it's a hurry up and wait situation. And God knows I do not thrive in those situations. I am God, give me the billboard, give me the answer. I prayed. Where are you? So, he slowed me down real quick to prepare me for the road we were going to be on.
Sure he did.
And so in January, Cody and I went and we sat down across from a very nice lady at Silver Linings. And she said, well, he does have autism. And I honestly can't tell you anything else that very nice lady said, because in my head, that lady was no longer a nice lady. And all she was doing was telling me everything that was wrong with my child.
Right.
And my mama gut just wanted to defend everything she was saying, and counteract it. Well, he acted like that during his eval because y'all took his Spider-Man toy away. Yeah. If you took my Spider-Man toy away, I'd fall on the floor and frail too. And especially because during those evals, you're actually separated from your child.
They won't let you be in there.
No. So I watched the whole eval through a double glass window while I'm watching him frail on the floor and act his absolute worst you ever want to watch a child act, because they're out of their environment and you've taken him away from mama and he's with strangers. So that kind of just set our ball rolling with our ADHD diagnosis, and then our high functioning autism diagnosis.
Okay. Is that it? I mean, was that the end? Was that the end of the diagnosis road?
Not the end of our diagnosis road, because the umbrella keeps growing.
Okay. All right.
So because he was evaled at 2, we actually had to be re-evaled at 5 for the school system. Okay. In order for his IEP to be in place.
Right.
So that was a little bit more difficult. We knew what to expect during testing, but we were on medicine at the time that had helped a whole lot of our behaviors, and we had developed a whole lot of speech. My nonverbal child that was first evaled was definitely not nonverbal when we went in for our second eval, and did not stop talking the whole time. As long as you're talking about him, he's happy. The social cues are not there to know that you don't want to talk about Pokemon or the ocean.
There you go.
But with that eval, they re-evaled him. And I always have to look it up because I did not even know this was an ICD-10 code. But now we have ADHD. And then our second diagnosis is other specified neurodevelopmental disorder with subclinical features of ASD insufficient for a full clinical criteria.
Yeah, I knew about the autism issue just from knowing your family and just the brief history that I know. But when I sent you a text and asked you so that I didn't want to come in this blind. I wanted, when I interview somebody, I at least want to be able to talk halfway knowledgeable to them about what they're talking about. So I said, hey, tell me about Logan. Tell me what his diagnosis is. And you sent the ADHD and the ASD. And I'm like, okay, I can handle that. I know about those.
Yeah, those are easy.
And then you sent me this encyclopedia
exactly
of something else.
That has a 4-letter ICD-10 code.
If you could have seen the face I made at my telephone when you sent that to me, it's probably the same face you had when that doctor sat across the table and told you about it.
And I said, so what you're telling me is my kid's too functioning to be autistic and too autistic to be functioning. And she goes, yeah, that'd be a lot simpler. And I was, and today while I was preparing for this, I went back through and I was rereading his eval. And it's like, we did nothing but counteract the whole time. It would be, this does not meet the specifications for autism. But then the next 2 seconds, he's not making eye contact with you and wants nothing to do with what you're doing. It's just a whole big word for.
The key word in all that is unspecified. They cannot put him in a category. They cannot put him in a group.
He is in his own world, and I would not expect it to be anything different.
He has his own thing going.
Yes, every day.
Yeah. Well, my goodness. So how a lot of folks are familiar with the ADHD and the autism spectrum. How does this new revelation, how does that figure into his daily life? What does that do or not do?
It's kind of a catch-22 because, like I said, he's too normal to be different, and he's too different to be normal.
Okay.
So I kind of feel like if you never want to wish for your child to teeter-totter into a worse part of the spectrum by any means, but he would have more of an understanding if people could physically see his disabilities. Yeah. Because to look at Logan, he looks like a happy, healthy 7-year-old boy who laughs and smiles and talks. You have no idea that he comes home and he says, I messed up a whole lot today. Yeah. And we have to go through his whole day. And I'm like, well, what'd you mess up on, buddy? And he said, well, I didn't read one word right. And where, even in this podcast, I've said, I don't know how many times, and I'll go to sleep tonight and won't think anything else about it. Yeah. He will replay that one moment over and over and over and over and get himself in a full-blown tizzy almost. Yeah. Over something that he thinks he's done wrong. So, but people can't see that side of his struggles because he does look like a happy, healthy 7-year-old boy who wants to play soccer. And today we found out he wants to play basketball. Lord help us all. But, he looks like a typical boy that has a whole lot more going on the inside.
What are some of Logan's specific needs, and how do they impact his daily life?
So Logan is a sensory seeker.
He's in school.
He is in school. And so we are in first grade. We are mainstream at Rosalie. But we do weekly OT therapy, occupational therapy. He actually graduated out of speech therapy in 2002. So we didn't have to keep doing speech and OT. When we first started, his deficits were so severe, they actually had to co-treat because he could not give the attention to speech that it needed without the sensory input from OT. And that kind of carries over into school now because we're having to sit in a desk all day long. And he does do well. He doesn't have to go to any special classes. They do have him a calm down corner if he does get overly stimulated. But to my understanding, we're not having to use that as much. So now we're seeing more of the internal struggles than the external that we were used to. Because now it's that he knows something's different about himself, that self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gets more upset internally than externally.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about autism, ADHD?
Oh, I could go down this road for a mile because as a mama, I had them all as I sat across from that wonderful lady who told me she was autistic, or Logan was autistic.
Yeah.
I sat and I thought while she was talking, and I'm sure Cody probably listened twice as much as I did because I said I tuned her out. Yeah. And my brain went to the autistic kids I know don't talk. Mm-hmm. The autistic kids I know don't go to class. They don't play sports. They don't go have fulfilling relationships. Yeah. And, I feel so guilty now looking back on those assumptions that I put on Logan before I even knew what he needed to be put on him to be his advocate. But, those were my personal misconceptions. And I feel like that goes across the board. Some people hear, oh, your son has autism. My name badge at work has the autism puzzles on it. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, your son has autism. I'm so sorry. I'm like, please don't be sorry. He doesn't suffer. It's just the way he is. Yeah. He is hilarious and he is blunt. And, even in the small situations, like if dad's preaching, the other night he said, do you know how long forever is in heaven? And this little voice from the pew behind me goes, well, it's infinity. Just,
he's a Bible scholar too, right?
Exactly. He takes everything in, and then in the most inconvenient times when you're like, not now.
And so much of it's literal too.
It is very, let's just say he's very literal, and he's very it is black and white. We're having to teach gray. And that's one of the other things we struggle with is, because he's mean to his sister and he is loud, and if it's too loud, he wants her to be quiet, and his retaliation is to yell at her and tell her to stop talking. And we're like, well, Logan, how would that make you feel if somebody told you to stop talking? And he's like, oh, I guess I'd be sad. Yeah, you would be sad. So trying to teach those social interactions, because kids are mean. And like I said, he doesn't look like, if you see someone in a wheelchair, the kids can see, oh, I need to hold the door open for them. Yeah. Those are things that are ingrained in us as human, but, autism and ADHD even are such a curtained disability. Yeah. That kids aren't really taught as much to be open-minded and understanding in those situations. And it's difficult to teach that, especially to kids who don't understand. Yeah. They don't understand their own brain, much less that something's not functioning right in somebody else's.
Right. All right. This is a good spot right here for us to take a break. When we come back, I've got a question that relates to you, not Logan. So I'm going to put you on the spot with it when we come back. And we'll be back here in just a minute with exceptional stories and the people who live them. All right, we're back with Camy Early, our guest this week on Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them. And she has been telling us a tall tale about a young man named Logan. And I have learned a lot just listening to this story, to this exceptional story, I should say, about Logan, and diagnosed with ADHD and is on the autism spectrum. And I'm going to try this other diagnosis here. I've got it written down. I'm going to try it and just see how we get through it. ADHD and other unspecified neurodevelopmental disorders with subclinical features of ASD, insufficient for full clinical diagnosis.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, Exceptional Stories family. We've got something very exciting to share. We want to put the spotlight on you. If you're a special needs parent or caregiver, we want to hear your questions for an upcoming Q&A episode. Send in your questions via email to exceptionalstoriespodcast@gmail.com or leave us a 90-second voice message at speakpipe.com/exceptionalstoriespodcast. We're diving deep into the most common pain points faced by special needs parents, and your input will shape this crucial conversation. I can't wait to hear from you. Let's make this Q&A episode truly exceptional.
in short, too normal to be not normal, and too not normal to be normal.
There's a song there somewhere. We'll have to write a song about that. Before we went to break, I told you I was going to ask you a question that had to do with you and not Logan, and here it is. How do you balance caring for Logan and taking care of his needs while you take care of your own needs and your own well-being?
Oh, you just want to get me all kind of blubbering.
Well, you live a busy life. You work a full-time job. You've got a house full of kids. You obviously you've got some sports and some other things coming up. So free time on your calendar, me time on your calendar is going to be non-existent.
I didn't know that there was is there a spot on the calendar where I can pencil that in?
Well,
I have had to learn. So when Logan was first diagnosed and I was struggling so bad, with what am I going to do and why me and why us? And it was, I will never forget it. We were sitting in Therapy Junction, where Logan goes to therapy at, and I looked at his therapist and I said, Krista, I don't know how I'm going to make it. I said, I'm tired. I've researched until I can't research anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing this. And she just looked at me, and it had to be God and the Spirit and everything else in between. And she said, God gave him to you for a reason. And it was that moment that it clicked of God put him with me for me to be an advocate, for me to be his mother. But he also chose me because he knew I would fight for him and I would push for him, but that I was also going to have to take a step back, and I couldn't do any of that if I was not breathing. Because I found myself every day holding my breath. Is this tantrum going to take off today? Are we going to have a meltdown today? I would worry 10 years in the future. And so I finally had to stop and just say, okay, we're going to be in the moment, and we're just going to figure it out, breath to breath, minute to minute. Some of those minutes are spent crying. The hardest part was when he would have the meltdowns, and they would last for hours and hours and hours before he was verbal. And we didn't have a clue. And I remember setting him in his crib where he was safe. He couldn't climb out of it at the time. I shut the bedroom door. I shut the living room door, and I went to the porch, and I sat there, and I had to regain myself. And I'm like, God, I don't know what I can do. And it was like, he told me, he said, Camy, you've got to breathe. And so that's my motto. I just take every day, breath by breath. And sometimes in those breaths, I'm able to schedule a little bit of me time. Not a whole lot, but I do try to slide some in there. And our support system goes a million miles, because without any of them, there's no way I could have advocated like I have, and I couldn't have pushed like I had without my parents and Cody's parents and my brother and Cody's sister saying, hey, we're going to take Logan for a little bit. We're taking Logan and Hayden, and you just go to sleep. And reset and recharge. And after I finally was able to not feel as guilty, taking that time back, and realizing that in order to take care of him, I had to take care of me first.
Yeah, you're not going to be any good to him if you're an emotional wreck, if you are sleep deprived or other issues going on. You are going to be zero help to him.
You're not. And, they feed off of that. And I would sit in the floor, he would cry and I would cry. And I didn't understand why Cody would get him, or Dad, especially Dad would grab Logan and they could go off humming any kind of 4-beat gospel song he could think of. And they were happy as larks. And I'm like, it's okay. I hadn't been sitting here for 4 hours trying to do that. But it was because Logan could feel every ounce of that tension and that worry. And that lack of control. When he was out of control, I had to figure out a way to put myself back in control. Instead of tail spinning with him.
Even though you were doing your best to hold it together and to just not break in front of him, he was still able to pick up on that.
Every bit of it.
Yeah.
And he still can. I can walk in the room and he'll say, what's wrong with you? I'm like, nothing's wrong, buddy. He's like, you look sad. And I'm like, well, I'm not sad. I'm tired. And it's been a long day. And he's like, okay. But even at 7, he can say something without even saying a word. He knows something's wrong with Mama.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine in those early stages when I did not have myself together and I was a built up ball of nerves.
And he was not verbal to where he could ask you those questions and
correct
turn that light on in your head to like,
exactly.
oh, okay.
I'm going to step back. I'm going to breathe for a minute.
I'm going to stand over here for just a second and we're going to regain this thing. Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely. What's been the hardest part about Logan and raising him so far?
I think it's the constant worry. It's just I don't know what's going to happen next. I have to be prepared for, I feel like, everything. And when I was getting ready for this podcast earlier, I remembered something that I had written. Because we do the whole month of April, we try to be big autism, put it out there and make sure people know that, we're here to answer questions. And, one of the things that people always ask me is, how do you handle everybody throwing information at you? And that was my hardest part. After Logan was first diagnosed, I actually threatened our parents and Cody within an inch of their life if they told anybody that he had been diagnosed, because I did not want the label put on him. And so I shut down, and because of my own fears, but just the fears in general of, is he going to one day find a girl who understands him and be able to have those kind of relationships?
Yeah.
Is he going to want to play sports? Is he going to be able to stay in a classroom? One recently is, is he going to understand the call on his life when Christ places it? Those kind of things come to the forefront of my brain. Like, I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe he's going to get us through. But what does that mean for my son who may or may not completely understand everything? Yeah. And so I've had to learn to slowly let go of my crippling fear, and turn that into advocacy for him, to advocate and to push, because my fear was tremendous.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally relate to that. Totally relate to that. On the other side of that coin, what's been the most fulfilling part so far?
He's so funny. And if you need to remember anything, tell Logan and he will remember it. Todd, and he was obsessed with the Amazon there for a little while, and the Amazon dolphins. Didn't even know the dolphins lived in the Amazon, but apparently they do. He teaches me something new every day. And he'll tell you he was 5. And Cody told him, well, when you're 10, we'll go to the Amazon. In passing, didn't think nothing about it. Just last week, he said, Daddy, I'll be 7 this year. He said, yeah, Logan, you'll be 7. He said, that means in 3 years, I'll be 10 and we're going to the Amazon. And we're like, oh gosh, he remembers everything. But he's a ball of knowledge, and he's great at math. Yeah. And he loves hard. When he loves you, and he wants to tell you that he loves you. Yeah. Personal space is an issue for him. So everybody gets hugs 95% of the time, and they are rough hugs because we don't understand to touch people gently. Yeah. But he is so much fun. And he just, like I said, just to sit back and watch him, things that I wondered if he would ever be able to do. I'm like, God laid it all out for him. He created him exactly like he wanted him to be. Yeah. And I'm just blessed to be able to be on the journey with him.
Absolutely. We've got about 10 minutes left here. And in that time, if you would, what advice or suggestions would you give to other parents of special needs children that maybe just feel overwhelmed and they have accepted what is in front of them, but they found themselves like you did, and they didn't have a clue how they were going to make it to bedtime, let alone 10, 20 years down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going back through, and that's what I was reading was the post that I had posted, and it said, when you talk about after testing, they didn't give us a handbook on what was going to happen. They didn't give us a playbook. They didn't lay it out for us. Everything I could see in my life that Cody and I had planned was gone. And as soon as I accepted that, and just figured out, okay, we're going to see what I can do to make whatever quality of life and whatever abilities he does have the strongest that we can possibly be, then I was able to function. And And then I kind of went into machine mode of, what about this therapy? What about this therapy? What about this diet? What about that? What about that? And then that kind of got a little overwhelming, and I had to take a step back, and I'm like, okay, you're doing it again. And it's a constant roller coaster of emotions that I feel like are completely normal, but you have to have that internal dialogue with yourself of, okay, am I getting too worked up in it? Do I need to take a pause? OT tells Logan, take 3 deep breaths when we're overwhelmed. And so even if Cody and I are upset and there's something going on, Logan will go, I think we all need to take 3 deep breaths. So that's my biggest advice, is just to step back and take those 3 deep breaths, and realize that even though I didn't have a clue what was going on with Logan, that Jesus knew the whole time. He knew before he formed Logan. He knew before I ever held that sweet green-eyed baby exactly what his life would look like. He knew that Cody and I would fight for him just like any other parent would do. And I think if you're blessed to be able to have children that are on the spectrum, because it is a blessing that I did not realize was a blessing at the time, that God gives us to people who are able to handle that blessing and navigate it, even when it's overwhelming, because it is overwhelming.
It is. It is. My oldest son has Asperger's on the autism spectrum. He's 27 years old, has worked a job at Chick-fil-A for the last 6-7 years, but he still has his hiccups. He still has his things along the way. But something Metha and I found out a long time ago, and it was a hard pill to swallow, but once we did, things got a little better, and we looked at things different, and that was, it's okay to not be okay.
100%. And that's what, Dad would tell me, it's okay if you're not okay today.
Yeah.
Because with Dad being full-time pastor, he was my navigation during the day. Mom was at work. Cody was at work. I didn't reach out to a whole lot of friends because I didn't want to know, I didn't want everybody else to know what I was struggling with on top of what Logan was struggling with. And so Dad and Sarah would just tell me, it's okay if you're not okay today, but you can't stop. And I would start a tailspin, and then I would go into more research, and they'd be like, it's okay to not know. And that's the hardest part, is the unknown. And autism is such a big umbrella that you can go down a rabbit hole for 20 years. And what works for Logan is not going to work for the next kid. And what worked on the next kid might not work for Logan. And that was another difficult thing that I had to grasp, of find what works for him. And for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you have made it to the end of the podcast. You have made it. Oh, me, such a great time getting caught up and hearing about Logan and hearing some things that brings back memories of when we were raising kids, and when sometimes the wheels fell off the wagon and you still had to stay in the wagon. You still had to keep going.
Our wagon weeble wobbles every day. We just keep on pulling.
Ours pulled to the left a little bit, but thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this. And I know it's going to help some folks. I know there's some folks out there that, whether it's a diagnosis of autism, something more severe, or something not even as severe as that, they feel overwhelmed. They feel like, what did I do to deserve this? I'm being punished. Whatever.
Absolutely.
When we get in our emotions and we get in our feelings, we'll think some of the craziest off the wall things.
Yes.
But, you are teaching them it's okay to not be okay. Let's back up. Let's take those breaths, and let's get in our right mind, and then let's go face this challenge right in front of us right now. Let's not worry about down the road.
Let's tackle what right now. What can I see?
Let's slay this giant that's standing in front of us right now.
That may actually be a teeny tiny anthill that we've turned into a giant, and we're like, because I'm so worked up. This was easy.
That's another podcast. Well, Camy, I do appreciate you being on here. And if Logan does end up playing sports, you've got to send me a schedule, because I got to watch that. I got to come watch that critter play.
He is all over the place, and I do. if anybody does have any questions or anything like that, my Facebook is always open. I do have a couple people who have reached out after we started posting about Logan's journey, just with questions on how to get the ball rolling on IEPs or testing or anything like that. So my Facebook inbox is open.
Okay. Well, I'll put that information in the show notes to go along with this, so that if there is someone out there that wants to reach out to you, maybe have a discussion offline and just talk to somebody. There's a lot of times you just need some ears to listen and a shoulder to cry on, and
exactly.
And you can do that for them. That would be great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on here. Looking forward to seeing how this helps folks, and we will see you somewhere down the road.
All righty. Thank you.
All right.